As someone with two parents who grew up in Brooklyn during the 80s and 90s, I often heard about how terrible hip-hop is now and how it's changed far from the greater golden era of hip-hop that they grew up with. For reference, when I speak and say the word old head in this video, I'm referring to people from the older generation or anyone from this generation too who believes that hip-hop now is nothing compared to the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, as well as people who even dismiss any sort of hip-hop that wasn't the norm during the 80s and 90s and doesn't address the current state of hip-hop as truly being hip-hop and sees the overall state of rap as being a shell of its former self. In this video, I'll go over the major points that old heads use to discredit current forms of hip-hop as well as the artists who are making music within those forms of hip-hop. As well, I'll do my best to defend hip-hop's current state and create a narrative that hip-hop hasn't changed at all. It's just evolved and created within itself a higher range and wider range of sound. The first issue that old heads have with new hip-hop is the genre of mumble rap. It's usually pointed to be the main culprit when pointing to the quote-unquote lyrical decline in hip-hop that transitioned from the 80s and 90s to the 2000s and 2010s. It's often been used as an argument to dismiss and negate the fact that a lot of talent has truly come out within the last 20, 15, and even 10 years, and also been used as an excuse to write off rappers that have recently come out, despite the fact that not all rappers that come out and came out during the era of mumble rap were mumble rappers. Mumble rap was clearly just an experimental sound of hip-hop that casually came and faded away, just like pretty much every other sound in hip-hop. Old heads treat the concept of mumble rap like a genre that came, take over, and became the face of hip-hop, and still stands to be the face of hip-hop and will forever be the face of hip-hop as long as lyrical rap isn't pushed to the forefront. Hip-hop is much more expansive today. There's mumble rap, trap, and melodic rap. There's so many other subgenres not mentioned when old heads come critically at the new age of hip-hop that they either have ignored as an entire genre or have decided to push to the side in favor of blindly hating on the entire generation of hip-hop and not looking at its subgenres or the artists who are actually the most talented out of the lyrical artists. Things like mumble rap, quote-unquote, melodic rap, auto-tune, singing rap, etc. that are pushed to be the face of hip-hop when they really aren't are what old heads are usually referring to when they criticize hip-hop. They're not the face of hip-hop, they're just traits, additives, and things used to spice up songs and different hip-hop artists. Hip-hop has always been influenced by things like funk and soul and other genres of black music. They are not exactly the faces of hip-hop, they are just part of it. Trends in hip-hop don't always become the face of hip-hop, hence why this argument has always seemed invalid to me. The next argument or claim I would like to go over is the claim that there are too many party songs, too many turn-up records, too many songs for dancing, and too many rappers trying to be one-hit wonders. This argument specifically shows an ignorance of how hip-hop started. Hip-hop was started by DJs creating beats off of DJ turntables and creating an environment that was better suited for a party through the use of making beats on their turntables. This would often be done by mixing two turntables and creating a beat that was better for dancing or better for rapping on. The most successful rappers at the time of the 80s and 90s were rappers who were able to create better and more adjusted party records. Hip-hop solely started out as a party genre. It was music made through the use of beats in order to create a better party environment. It's fair to assess hip-hop as somewhat more of a serious genre used in order to convey an artist's life. However, it didn't always start out that way. From DJs using beats in order to create a beat for freestyling or at a party to dance to, hip-hop was always centered around party and party culture for black people. It was always centered around a gathering environment, and I can understand the issue of not liking one-hit wonder artists who can't stay in the game and have no staying power despite showing talent on that one-hit wonder track they have, but to argue that there are too many songs being made for hip-hop as turn-up records when hip-hop was centered around turning up in the first place shows a lack of understanding the development of hip-hop and what it came to be. Rappers back in the day were doing live performances and had their own dances. Dancing in hip-hop and turning up was nothing new to hip-hop at all. In fact, it's how it got started. Turn-up records create the most money for any artist in general, and creating a dance just gives you a larger fan base, so I don't get why a rapper could get hate at all for creating a dance for their song and creating turn-up records, which gets the most love and makes them the most money the quickest way possible. The next criticism is that there's too much of a focus on commercialism and materialism in modern hip-hop. This is probably the most fair criticism out of all criticisms of modern hip-hop, and I get why a lot of old heads make this one. How much money a rapper appears to have is part of their brand, how hard they flex, the money they have, the clothes they wear, the car they drive, the house they have, etc. And it's no big secret, a lot of rappers who flex the most are usually the brokest and the label pays for a bunch of the things they have. However, I think a lot of this is to blame on the labels specifically. The labels pay for a lot of the things they have, and they help push this narrative that the music industry is a lot more profitable than it actually is. I understand how appearing richer than you are is also an incentive and also a better image for the rapper themselves. It makes it look like you've made it out the hood. It makes you look like you have way more money than you do. It makes it look like you've been finally granted everything you could ever ask for in life. It looks like you worked hard for everything as well. However, rap is now way more lucrative than it was in the 80s and 90s. This is why, at least in my opinion, I see a lot more people who weren't rappers and were just regular celebrities come out with rap music. Commercialism and materialism wasn't heavily pushed in rap lyrics during the 80s and 90s. However, there was slight amounts of flexing. There wasn't the level of flexing you would see today in hip-hop. I can understand how somebody who grew up with 80s and 90s hip-hop could be very critical of rap today when they see the focus on commercialism and lyrics as compared to the 80s and 90s focus on commercialization. As hip-hop back then wasn't really focused on what you did or didn't have, it just really mattered if you got out the hood and weren't broke anymore. However, I believe the concept of hip-hop not being properly gate-kept in a way is what started hip-hop's focus on materialism and commercialization. Rappers no longer became rappers. They had to become businessmen if they wanted to be successful in the long run. Start side businesses, become businessmen, create marketing tools themselves, and basically become experts on the music industry in order to stay relevant, whether it be in the music world or in whatever commercial world that they decided to succeed in aside from rap. Hip-hop becoming fully mainstream is what I believe allowed it to become more pervasive and more focused and centered upon making money than showing a more authentic and realistically based view of what the normal and average rapper's life is. And now I believe, at least, it is harder to push the average rapper if they don't have the stereotypical appearance of one. The next criticism is the criticism that rappers today aren't about the life that they speak about in their rap, or don't have street authenticity or commit crimes that they talk about. Rap within itself has a certain amount of ambiguity to it. Rappers talk about shooting guns, killing people, fucking niggas, bitches, the whole 9 yards when it comes to committing crime, but really a certain amount of ambiguity must exist within rap for it to be more grounded in entertainment than in reality. There's really no benefit for an artist to be 1 foot in the industry and 1 foot in the criminal world. A lot of artists like Bobby Shmurda, because of their authenticity, were locked up for years and unable to create music and create a healthy career in rap while being locked up. Old heads specifically kill me with this argument because they'll often say, oh, back in my day, if you were a rapper, you couldn't talk about things like this unless you were actually doing them. But in the same sentence, any rapper today who speaks on things they've actually done in the streets and actually end up getting locked up because of their criminal history will always be ridiculed by the older generation of rap fans, with them often saying how this rapper has ruined a golden opportunity to get up out the hood and make money in a legal fashion. And while this comment is true, it's a true argument to state that it is stupid for an artist to continue a life of crime. It seems very contradictory to praise an older generation that you come from for doing that, but degrade and insult the younger generation. Rap is 100% about entertainment, and while yes, there is an entertaining side to street beefs, it's always intriguing to see for some reason. Artists should never be focused on their image, and more so should be focused on how to make money through legal avenues such as their music or other legal business ventures. Downplaying this generation of rappers' street authenticity is a very trivial thing and very much inhibits and stops rap from growing as an art form, as certain things are pushed and focused on as a narrative about an artist rather than the actual art they push. The final argument that old heads use that I'll be examining is the fact that rappers don't talk about real issues today or aren't as real as rappers back then because they don't speak about these topics. I remember rapper KRS-One saying that there are no real men in hip-hop, and his belief was that this is grounded in the fact that modern rappers don't point out what they see as injustices towards black people or towards the black community or other experiences they've had with things like racism as being a reason there are no real men in hip-hop, as well being focused on material items and not things that a man should be focused on, such as family, togetherness, and building their community. I always felt like this was an unfair judgment, but I could see where he's coming from. Most rappers are young men in their 20s and 30s, finding their way out of the streets through making music and becoming artists. Many men can attest that we don't really become men in our 20s, really only until we start a family or grow and become older and learn more things and create a career for ourselves. And rap specifically has changed in becoming an art form. A rapper may have a lot of expensive things but may not value those things as much as he values his morals or his family. I understand that back in the day, rap used to talk about more troubling topics within the black community. However, it's evolved and changed beyond that. Being real doesn't always pay the bills. A lot of real quote-unquote rappers aren't making the type of money they should with their their talent because certain topics are more entertaining to hear about whether or not they actually need to be heard about. Rappers to a degree have a certain persona that separates themselves from reality, and this persona is probably not who they truly are as a person. They may seem like somebody who's materialistic, focused solely on their music and making money from that music, as well as creating a fan base. However, they could be seeking to improve their community as well. Men in hip-hop are still young men growing and developing just like everybody else. I don't believe that this necessarily makes them bad people, as we are all just humans. Men in mainstream hip-hop, as he says, that aren't considered real men still have time to grow, develop, and become real men, by his definition at least. And in my opinion, there are enough rappers who talk about certain topics that are less talked about, specifically within the black community and rap as a whole, with enough nuance and authenticity and a good perspective on said subjects in order to create a better perspective on said subjects. So essentially my argument against this topic is that not all rappers really need to speak on these topics within their rap, and that's okay because I believe enough rappers already do speak on these topics, and I believe more and more rappers with the ability to speak on these properly will come about and do so. Well, rappers are still developing and learning humans just like all of us, and them not further valuing everything that should be valued is okay because down the line they may learn to value the things that they should. Rappers should only speak on what they feel is important to them and topics they feel they can handle properly. Thanks for watching this video. I hope to tackle other topics like this. I've always felt like even if it doesn't make sense, there's always a feeling of the old having to judge and dismiss the new. Comment how you feel about this topic and any new video suggestion ideas. Drop a like, subscribe. Have a great day. Hope your new year started off great.